Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Cloud by Veer, and my name is Virender. I have more than 8 years of experience in the IT industry, and as of now, I'm working as a senior consultant with a very well versed organization. And in this specific video, we are going to talk about a very important topic for each and every organization who are looking for a solutions in which if you're looking for an in-memory database or in-memory data store, we have the service inside Amazon Web Services, which is named as ElastiCache. We are going to talk about what exactly this ElastiCache is, and inside this ElastiCache, we have two options available. The first option I have written over here, which is Redis cluster we can create, and second we have is Memcached. Now, depending on the use case of the different organizations, you can go with either way. Either you can use Memcached or you can use Redis cluster inside Elastic Cache, or you can use both as well. Now, before moving ahead and before jumping towards the practical demonstration of how exactly we can create a Redis cluster using Elastic Cache in Amazon Web Services environment, first, let's try to understand what exactly this elastic cache is, and then we will be talking about what exactly the importance of the Redis, and then what exactly the importance of Memcached. So this entire lab activity is this entire demonstration which I'm going to show you will what exactly we will be doing. We will be setting up a very highly available and scalable Redis cluster in this specific lab activity. Why we are creating this Redis cluster in this specific lab environment? Because this Redis is something which is very useful to store the data. And which kind of data? The data which requires very quick access. If you have an application, and in your application if you have that kind of data which requires very quick access by the users basically, then you can have an option of Redis inside Elastic Cache. So this Redis is an in-memory data store. What exactly this Redis is? In-memory data store. Okay, this is a very technical definition. Okay, this is an in-memory data store. Now, can you please, Virender, tell us a little bit more about this in-memory data store? What exactly it does? Yes. So in-memory data store means that it will keep everything in the memory itself, and the memory is nothing but your random access memory. That's why it is called as an in-memory data store. Whatever the data this Redis is going to be stored, it is going to be stored the data inside your memory, which is your random access memory. What will be the benefit of that? Why it is storing the memory inside the memory, the data inside the memory, and which type of data? The data requires which requires a very quick access. Basically, it will make the data retrieval extremely fast. Whenever a user will try to access the data which is stored inside the memory itself, user will get the data in very fast way, right? So in a specific scenario where you have an application that requires very fast access to frequently used data, what type of frequently used data can be? For an example, you can have your user sessions, maybe a couple of users on your applications. They frequently access their profile, they frequently access their personal information, so you can store the user informations inside user sessions. Leaderboard data you can have if you are have an gaming application where you are showing a leaderboard to your users where they can check their places in a specific game environment. Then you can store that information in your memory so that every time they check the leaderboard, they will be able to check that in a very fast manner. Then you can have your product catalog. If you have an e-commerce application and you have a couple of products on your application, and if a user or multiple users are trying same product every time, you can store the information of that product inside the memory so that every time a new user came to access the same information again, your application will be able to provide the data in a specific faster way, right? So you can have both of the options. You can have Redis inside Elastic Cache and you can take Memcached as well, right? So in this specific lab, I will guide you through the steps of creating the infrastructure to support these type of applications, right? Now, let's came to the main point, which is the Elastic Cache, because Elastic Cache is the service which provides us the facility to use either Redis or to Memcached. But exactly this Elastic Cache is. Elastic Cache is just like, suppose I'm just taking a very simple daily life example. This is your maybe, let's say that this is your coffee shop. This is your coffee shop. Okay. Now, different customers are coming to your coffee shop on the daily basis. Now, and those customers are ordering the coffee in your coffee shop. That is a very simple example. You have a coffee shop, customers are coming to your coffee shop, they are ordering something or ordering coffee to you from you. Now, instead of going to back to fetch a paper with each customer's order every time, what exactly I'm talking about, there is a customer number one came to you, order something, and this is your first order. Here you are sitting on the specific bench to take the orders. This is your first order. You go back, you take one piece of paper, come again and write the order. Then the second customer came to you for the order. You again go to the back, take one more piece of paper, and again write the order on that piece of paper. This is not a good practice. It will take a lot of time. If you will have 100 customers, this is not a good practice to take 100 different piece of papers to write 100 different orders, right? So you keep the most frequently asked for orders right at the counter over here. Amazon Elastic Cache does something similar. It keeps frequently requested data on your application readily available in memory, which will basically speed up the access and it will reduce the load on your main storage, that is your database basically. That is what the use case for the Elastic Cache. Now, inside Elastic Cache, we have two ideal options. Either you can go with the Redis or you can go with this Memcached. Redis we have already discussed, right? Redis is something like a notepad. You can keep that notepad in front of you. If customers are frequently ordering a particular drink or particular coffee, you quickly just note it down and refer to the notepad instead of repeatedly asking the kitchen for the details for the specific order, right? So this is how this Redis works, which basically stores your data in the memory, which will allow you to retrieve the data in a very faster manner than querying a traditional data, right? What can be a real-time example for this Redis cluster is that maybe you have a web application where so many different users are frequently accessing their profiles. So you can store the user session data in Redis to make the experience very quicker for the different customers out there. Next, we have this Memcached over here. What exactly this Memcached does is, now Memcache is also, another type of in-memory store, as these both are the in-memory stores basically. But what exactly the key difference between these two is that Memcached is also an in-memory store, which is very similar to the Redis, but it with a very simpler structure from the Redis. It's like having a very or having a sticky notes where you can write down the common orders given by different customers. Maybe you are having 100 customers in your coffee shop and there are 20 customers who are ordering the common products from your coffee shop, so you can look at them quickly. That's why you are having a sticky notes in which on which you are writing those common products orders from the common customers, and you can look at these quick sticky notes and you can just take the information quickly from the sticky notes. But once the note fills up, you need to replace the old ones. Once the knot fills up, you need to replace the old ones knots. Memcached is just useful for caching smaller data, which is often used like a leaderboard for a game that updates frequently. We have discussed about it is very less complex compared to the Redis, and the main focus of Memcached in memory stored database is basically the main focus is on smaller data or caching the smaller databases basically. So it's less complex from the Redis, and it is totally focused only on the caching key value pairs without any advancement in the data structures. So if you're looking for a very simpler solutions, then you can go with the memcached data store. And if you're looking for some advanced solutions for advanced application, then you can go with the Redis cluster using ElastiCache. I hope this is understandable by all of you basically. Now let's directly jump towards the AWS management console and let's see how exactly the different steps we need to follow and what are the different steps which we need to follow basically. Now, the very first step which we are going to create is that what are the different services we are going to use inside this lab environment. We are going to use ElastiCache in which we are creating the Redis cluster. We will create an EC2 instance, which is our virtual machine. So let me just open the EC2 in this new tab. Let me just open the VPC in the new tab as well, because we are going to create a security group first to protect the EC2 instance, basically, which is security group is nothing but the virtual firewall for your EC2 instances. We are going to create our virtual machine to access the data using Redis cluster. And the third, we are going to use ElastiCache, which is your in-memory cache service from Amazon Web Services. This is the third service which we are going to use to create our Redis cluster, right? This is what the exact scenario will be. So the very first task we are going to do is that let me just go to the another region. Maybe this time let's go to the Singapore region and EC2 as well. Let's go to the Singapore and ElastiCache as well. Let's go to the Singapore. Okay. Now let me just first create a security group for our EC2 instance basically. Okay. Now let's give the security group name as ElastiCache security group, and this is security group for ElastiCache. VPC, let's select this default VPC as of now. And what exactly the inbound rule you want to provide over here? I want to SSH inside my EC2 instance. So I'm just providing SSH from anywhere. I will be providing HTTP access for my EC2 instance as well, which will be from anywhere IPv4. And I'm also provide a custom TCP rule as well. And in this custom TCP, for to open the port for the Redis, there is a port range which you can select for the Redis, which is nothing but 6379, and it will be from custom from anywhere IPv4, right? These are the different ports 22, 80, 6379. These ports I have opened for the security group. So if I will be attaching this security group to any virtual machine inside my organization or inside my account, the security group will allow my EC2 instance to be accessible from these different ports which I have opened over here. Fine. Now, before creating the virtual machine, let's go to the ElastiCache and let's create our Redis cluster. Let's just click on this get started over here. You have both of the options available. Either you can go with the Redis and you can go with the Memcached over here. Now let's just go to this Redis cluster over here. And on the very first screen, when you are creating the Redis cluster over here, there is a section of configuration in which you need to provide some configurations for your Redis cluster over here, in which the very first option you have is deployment option. In what way you want to deploy your Redis cluster. So I want to design my own cache over here. You can use this option if you want to create a cache by selecting the node type as per your requirement, the size as per your requirement, and the count as per your requirement as well. If you will use serverless, which is a new feature by AWS, which will quickly create a cache that will automatically scales the application traffic depending on the demands without no server management. But I'm going with the design our own cache basically, in which the creation method should be cluster cache I am going to create. Cluster cache is nothing but will be a set of all the configuration options for the new cluster. So I'm going to provide all the set of different informations to create my Redis cluster. Now, what should be your cluster mode? I want to enable my cluster mode. So if you are enabling your cluster mode, it will support the partitioning your data across 500 different node groups, which basically improves the performance of your Redis cluster basically, right? So you can distribute the data across different node groups, which is nothing but the difference or the partitioning of the data which this Redis cluster will be having. It will divide the data or transfer that data into multiple or partition that data into multiple node groups up to 500, which will improve the performance of your application or your Redis cluster. What is the cluster information over here? What should be the name? So it is my Redis cluster will be the name of my cluster. What should be your location? Is it you are creating in your AWS cloud or you're creating for your on premises? So you can select this AWS cloud. You want to enable the multi-AZ environment, so I can enable or I can disable as well. So if you want highly available application, then you can select this enable and you can untick this as well. Right now, some cluster settings. What should be the engine version you want to select? You can select from the given. Let me just select a random version for my Redis engine over here. What should be the port? I have already opened this 6379 port, so which is a default. Your parameter groups, which are basically responsible to control the runtime of the data which is happening inside your nodes and the clusters. That parameter group you can select. Let's just have it a default. What should be your node type, which means the configuration of the memory size which you want to select over here for your Redis cluster. So I'm just making it as default, which is all by default selected over here. Or you can just go with any smaller type of instance as well. Let me just go with t2.micro so that there will be no more cost inside my account. And how many number of shards, which means the partition of the cluster you can select from very which is 1 to 500, which means the partitioning of the Redis cluster data. So I'm selecting up to 3, and replicas, which means the copy of the data, and it will create some replicas to handle only the read request of the data of your application. You can go up to 0 to 5. So let me just make it as 1. Fine, and let me just make it 1 as well. Now we have this subnet group option available, in which you can create a new subnet group. Let me just provide name first, and we will be talking about what exactly this subnet group is. Basically, it will be the combination of the different subnets, typically the private subnets combination basically, which is a subnet group basically. And that how why it is given over here is that it is basically designated a subnet group for the different clusters which are running in your VPC basically environment. So whatever the VPC you are selecting over here, inside that VPC your cluster is going to be running, and inside that VPC you will have a multiple private subnets to run your application or your databases. So automatically those private subnets will be taken by the AWS ElastiCache in this subnet group basically, right? So you can give a name as maybe ElastiCache subnet group, very simple name. What should be this description? You can say like this is the subnet group for ElastiCache VPC. Let's just select this default VPC, which is by default selected over here. And these are the different subnets available inside that VPC, which are automatically being selected by this ElastiCache automatically. Availability is on placement. You can have this by default, and shard is available over here. And one more thing which should be available over here, maybe in the next page it is available. Encryption, you want to have any encryption at rest or encryption at transit. Let me just I'm not going to select these, and you need to select the security group. Let me just click on this manage, and let's just select this ElastiCache security group which we have created earlier. In the backup, I don't want any backup of my data, no maintenance I want, no any type of logs I want. So I will just click on this next. This is the configuration of my Redis cluster, and let me just click on this create button over here. So now it is going to create the Redis cluster for us. in just couple of seconds. And it will take around 5 to 10 minutes depending on few things basically. So we will wait, and meanwhile, let it become in the available state. Let's go to the EC2 section and let's create our virtual machine. So to create a virtual machine, first we need to provide name to the virtual machine. So let me provide name as my EC2 server, which is a very common name, which is by default given over here without any spaces. And then let me just select this Amazon Linux operating system AMI for my virtual machine. Apart from that, what should be the instance type over here? We can select the c2.micro. Any key pair you want to use for your EC2 instance, you can create a new key pair. Otherwise, you can just select this proceed without a key pair. Now, in the network settings, you have to select your VPC. In our case, we have selected this default VPC. Any subnet preference? I don't want to prefer any subnet for this specific EC2 basically. Do you want to assign the public IP to this EC2? Yes, it should be enabled. Which is the firewall which we want to select for this EC2? So I want to select ElastiCache security group, which I have created earlier for this EC2 instance. Anything else you want to create for this EC2 instance? No, I will just click on this launch instance. And let me just check if this ElastiCache Redis has been created or not. No, Redis cluster is still in the creation state. So virtual machine has been created, folks. Let me just go to the instance section and let's see. You can see that your EC2 instance is now in the running state. You can see over here, right? Let's just copy the public IP address of this EC2 instance, and let me just copy this public IP of EC2 instance in a notepad so that we will use this public IP in future to access this EC2 instance from the internet basically, right? And let's just again check if it is created. So I'm going to pause this recording, and I will be continuing once it will be in the available state. So stay tuned, folks. So now our Redis cluster is in the available state. You can see over here. So what exactly you need to do, you just need to open this Redis cluster from here. You need to copy this configuration endpoint to access this Redis cluster. Copy this and paste it in your notepad in such a way that at the end of this configuration endpoint, there is the port number written. Just delete this port number, and this is your Redis cluster configuration endpoint, which is available over here. Now, the next step which you need to perform is that you need to connect to your EC2 instance. Let me just go to this connect section over here, and let's just try to connect to this EC2 instance. And now we are going to follow some commands over here. First, we need to install this required some packages, and so that we will be able to connect to the ElastiCache cluster. Basically, the very first command which we need to use is that sudo yum install gcc hyphen y. Why exactly I have used this gcc command over here? Those who don't know, this gcc package is basically your GNU compiler collection, which is a tool basically to compile the code, particularly the code which is written in the C and C++ programs. Basically, it is required. It's not directly related to the Elastic Cache, or it is not directly related to your AWS basically, but it is required in the Elastic Cache in the specific lab, because we are downloading and compiling the Redis from the source code. Basically, as you know, that Redis is an open source in memory data store, and by default it's distributed as source code, which basically needs to be compiled first into an executable program on the EC2 instance basically. And that is why we are using this gcc command. So after, we need to make some make commands as well. After downloading the Redis, first we need to download the Redis, now then we need to make some make commands to get the data basically. That's why we use this gcc command over here. So don't confuse yourself, you can write these commands in your local notepad as well to follow the same step. Now we need to install the Redis cluster, which we need to follow some commands over here. Now I have already written these comments over here. Let me just copy these comments and let me just paste it over here. Okay, let me just hit the enter button. Okay, Redis has been downloaded, and let me just paste the next command over here. Okay, it is saying, okay, I need to write it's TAR minus XV set F Redis stable dot AR dot gset. Hit the enter button. It will download and it will install the Redis cluster basically, and then we will change the directory to this Redis table, which is cd Redis stable. We are now in the Redis table in which we need to make command over here, which uh, I will explain all the commands basically why we are doing these commands basically. We have used a couple of commands so that we can install the Redis cluster. We have used the GCC command as well to compile the code, which is from the Redis open source basically. And now, once it will be completed, we are going to connect the Redis cluster basically. So all these commands we have done because we want to connect the Redis cluster to our EC2 instance. Now, to connect the Redis cluster to your EC2 instance, we again need to follow some commands over here. Let's just it be finished first, and then we will be continuing. Oh, it is taking some time over here. Okay, let me just pause this recording first. Okay, it is completed now. Now it is asking us so that we will be able to link the Redis server over here. So the command is src. We are going to connect the Redis over here so that every CLI command which we want to use over here, we will be able to use that. For that, now we need to copy that endpoint we have pasted earlier over here. Copy that. Okay, okay, let's wait for a couple of more seconds. Okay, now it's a good idea to run the make test now. Okay, fine. Let me just write that again over here. Uh, source Redis, sorry, source Redis hyphen CLI hyphen C hyphen H, and now the endpoint which we have copied. Let me just paste that over here. And after this endpoint, we need to provide P and the port 6379 was the port. Hit the enter over here. Fine. Now let's just test the ElastiCache cluster by using some Campbell sample commands basically. Let's just set a string to hello. Okay. And now to get the value of this string a, often get a, we receive that hello which we have given to this a string. Basically we got the value of the a. Now let's just create a string b, which is basically let's just set a string b in which let's provide name as Virender over here. And for this we are providing one expiry time of, let's suppose, 5 seconds only, right? Now when we have done this get set a in which we have provided this hello, we haven't defined any expiry time for the value of this hello in this specific data set. So whenever a user tries to access hello anytime, they have to wait for the same time. Now we are providing this expiry time of 5 seconds. It is basically if you execute this command within 10 seconds or within 5 seconds, you will be able to see the value of b. But if you will try to access the value of b variable or b string, which is Virender, which is value of b, After 5 seconds, you will be not able to see the content basically. Let me just hit enter over here. It says okay. And before 5, let's select get B. It is showing Virender, and let's wait for 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Done. Let me just again hit get, or let me just clear the screen first. And now let's just get, see, nil. So automatically, if you're not providing any expiry time for the data which is going to be stored inside the memory, that data you can get every time. If you just say get A, it will give hello, which is we, because we have not given, or we have not basically explain, not explain, we have not given any expiry time for the value of A, but we have given one expiry time for the value of B, which is after the time, if you want to try to access that particular data, you will not able to access because it has removed from the data store. Wow. So you can see how exactly we can create a Redis cluster, but exactly the benefit of using Redis cluster, right? So to delete, just go to the cluster over here, go to the actions, click on the delete, the name of the new backup created, my Redis cluster over here, copy, paste, and click on this delete. Go to your instance, terminate the instance as well, because if you will not do that, it is going to give you a lot of cost inside your account. So always remember to delete all the resources you create once while you are having this lab environment running on. So I hope you have understood the concept of Redis cluster inside ElastiCache, and it will be a similar concept of the Memcached cache as well, which we have seen what is the key difference between these two. So if you have enjoyed this video and if you have learned a new thing, you can give me a like on this video, and you can have any suggestions or any comments, you can put it inside the comment box as well. Thank you so much for watching my video. My name is Virender, and I thank you to watch this specific video. We'll meet in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Thank you so much. Good night.